Hello，你好，欢迎回来。Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on December 16, 2020. I want to take this opportunity to give a quick update. Tiger had his dental surgery this past Monday. He had four teeth removed, and he is now recovering nicely. He made it through the surgery with flying color. So that was a definite relief, even though it cost me like an arm and a leg and a kidney to pay for this surgery, and wouldn't be able to do it if not because of some very generous donation from my really good friends, including my beautiful, intelligent girlfriend, who contributed a large chunk of what was needed. So here is a heartfelt thanks to everybody who helped keep Tiger alive, and we can hope that he, he is now on his road to full recovery and will be able to eat and play and be his normal, cranky, vicious, ferocious self. Continuing our series of five animal immortals. To quick recap, in Chinese mythology, Chinese religion, no matter Taoism, Buddhism, maybe with the exception of Confucianism, uh, I always have problem with that one. Anyway, um, there is a sideline, a side little branch of this religion that's sort of the equivalent of what's passed for paganism in Chinese society. That is still widely followed today, particularly by people in northeastern China, who spend a lot of their time hunting and farming and growing various crops and raising various animals. And there are five animals that are worshipped. Sometimes it's gods and goddesses, sometimes it's demons and evil spirits. We have already covered three out of the five in the past 3 weeks. So if you have missed the last 3 weeks, then please do go back and check them out. I think there's some interesting stuff in there. Today we are going to talk about perhaps my personal favorite, the one that I am usually the most interested in out of the five. Not that I worship them or anything, but just this particular animal is the more interesting and more captivating to me personally. Number four on the list of five animal immortals is called Liu Xian, Liu Xian, Shiang, Liu Xian. It's the snake immortal, the snake god, the snake goddesses. Comparing to the previous three, the snake's road to becoming immortal is perhaps the longest, the most variable, and at the end reaps the highest reward. You see, while the previous three immortals, when they gained immortality, when those animals gained immortality and became demigod and then god, they basically kept to their true nature. So a fox becoming a demigod, growing nine tails, turning into a nine-tailed fox, and turning into a nine-tailed fox god. It's still a fox. Uh, a weasel turning into a god weasel. God weasel. That just sounds weird. Uh, that is still a weasel. When it's sitting at home, doing nothing, watching TV, it's still a weasel. When a hedgehog turns into a god hedgehog, God, that sounds even worse. When it's sitting at home taking a nap, it's still a hedgehog. Not so in the case of a snake. For a snake, the snake have to go through 5 transformations before it reaches its highest potential. The first stage is called sir, like when you call someone sir, just like with less pronunciation on the R, sir. A sir is basically your regular snake, regular serpent, cobra, rattlesnake, diamondback, yada yada yada, blackadder, whatever. Snake, that's a sir. When a snake get up to 500 years old, can a snake even live 500 years? Well, that's what makes it immortal. We're not going to go into biology here, but going by mythology, when a snake go up to 500 years, it graduates into a Mong, M-O-N-G. Mong means giant snake. Uh, so it turned into something about the size of a boa constrictor, a python, something like that. And then when a Mong get another 1,000 years under its belt, it turns into a Ran, R-U-N, Ran, not run, but Ran, R-U-N. Um, in mythology, a Ran is kind of described to be equivalent of an anaconda. It's massive, it's like the largest a snake can get. Um, some people say a Ran can swallow an elephant. So that's a really, really, really big snake. A Ran also have um, a special property that it has 2 gallbladders, and one of its gallbladder can cure any kind of ailment or disease, and the other one of its gallbladder, if you grind it down into powder form and put it on a person's body or drink it down with water, it can keep you from feeling any kind of pain in your body. Not going to heal you, but just it's a super strong painkiller. Legend has it in Tang Dynasty there was a king's minister who got caught doing something naughty, and whether he actually did it or someone framed him, there's different accounts to that. But anyway, he got accused of doing something naughty, and he got sentenced to death penalty. He got sentenced to die to the death of 1,000 cuts. And what is the death of 1,000 cuts? We're going to digress a little bit here and talk about this very real, very brutal Chinese this Chinese execution method, the death by 1,000 cuts. Really, really brutal stuff, usually reserved to people who are accused of treason or incest or serial killers, the people who were like the highest level of evil in the eyes of the court in Chinese history. And it's basically what it sounds like when you are sentenced to death of 1,000 cuts. It's not always 1,000 cuts, mind you. It's just the name says it's 1,000 cuts. How many cuts? It's up to the ministrate or the emperor to determine. So the emperor can say, you are going to die by 200 cuts. And that's exactly what have to happen. They have to keep you alive until the last cut. If you die before the 200 cuts, like let's say you were sentenced to 200 cuts, and you die on cut number 100, then you have one, you only suffered 100, then the person, the executioner himself, have to suffer the rest. They get sentenced on the rest. That's how serious this stuff was. So if a person was sentenced to this was really big deal to the executioner. The executioner had to be really, really, really skilled. Um, they will tie you up, and start with your fingertip, and they'll inflict these cuts on your hand, finger, back of your hand, and every few cuts, there will be a physician, a doctor, there to determine that if you had enough for the day. And let's say you passed out after 30 cuts, and the doctor said, oh, he's losing too much blood. Then they'll take you back to jail, nurse you back to health, and then you'll have to basically do the rest later. Because they do it in installments. They don't do 1,000 cuts all in one day. So the death by 1,000 cuts was like one of the most brutal torture and execution in Chinese history. So this king's minister was sentenced to die by, I believe he was sentenced 360 cuts. And it took 5 days to carry out those cuts before he was allowed to die. While he was suffering through these cuts, one of his loyal followers sneaked the gallbladder of a ram into his jail cell and asked him to eat it so he wouldn't feel the pain of all these cuts. Story goes that the minister rejected the offer. He threw the gallbladder out and he said, I am a human being. My gallbladder is the gallbladder of a human being. I will not eat the gallbladder of a monster to keep myself from feeling the pain that my emperor said I deserve. Now, if that wasn't bravery and foolishness, I don't know what was. And not to mention, a gallbladder of a ram is extremely hard to come by. I mean, just a quick recap. For a regular snake, a to turn into mang took like 500 years, and then for a mang to turn into a ram take another 1,000 years. So you got to find yourself a snake that's at least 1,500 years old, very very big, big enough to swallow an elephant, and you got to somehow be able to kill it. Back then there was no rocket launcher or machine gun. Back then just bow and arrow. So I imagine getting that gallbladder was very difficult, and he wouldn't even take it. So okay, back to our original uh, uh, line of thought. For a Ran to continue down the road of uh, becoming immortal, if a Ran can stay alive for another 1,000 years, actually I believe it's 3,000 years, for a Ran to go another 3,000 years, it will grow a horn out of the middle of its head, and it will become a Jiao, Jio, Jiao. Jiaos are very commonly mentioned in Chinese mythology, Chinese stories. They are like water monsters. They live in the water. They're big enough to attack even the largest of warships, and they can run the ship through with a horn on their head, and they can devour everything, everyone on the ship. Jiaos were the original Chinese lake monsters, sea monsters. For Zhao to survive another 5,000 years, it grows legs and wings, and you guess it, it turns into a long, Long, a dragon. And this is why Chinese dragons look like snakes, look like serpents, because they were snakes when they were babies. It took so quick recap on how this goes. A se, a regular snake, goes 500 years, becoming a mang, a giant snake. A giant snake go another 1,000 years, turning to a ran, a really giant snake. And this ran lived for another 3,000 years, turning to a jiao, basically a water dragon. And then this jiao have to live another 5,000 years before it finally turned into a real dragon. That's a really long time. I mean, the reward is great. I mean, considering dragons the most powerful beast, most powerful animal in Chinese mythology. So the reward in the end is worth the wait, but it's a really long road for a snake to achieve full godhood. To make this even more interesting, or actually even worse for the snake, any time during this journey, it has to survive two trials: the trial of lightning and the trial of uh, children. Well, they actually call it the trial of innocence, but it's basically trial of children. So, what are these trials? Because while these animals, no matter it's a fox or a weasel or a snake or whatever, while these animals are trying to become immortal, they are, shall we say, in the system. It's like when you are trying to become a university student, when you're trying to become a doctor. Now, no one just suddenly walk out of the wood and say, I got a PhD, right? You got to be in school. While you're in school, you're in the system. The government know what you're up to. The government know you're there. There's paperwork on you. There's a lot of document on you. It's the same thing with these animals, objects, inanimate objects that seek to achieve immortality. The moment they become sanctioned, the moment they become aware that they are now on the road to become immortal, they are being watched by the Jade Emperor or whoever he appoints to look after, to uh, supervise what's going on, to prevent too many things from being able to become gods or goddesses. You know, just like, not everyone can get a PhD, not everyone can get a master's degree. You got to have money to begin with. Anyway, we're not going to go into that. To prevent too many animals, too many things from becoming goddesses, usually they somewhere along the road they have to go through some kind of trial where only the ones that survive go on to continue on their journey. For the snake, one of these was the trial of innocence. It is said that on the snake's way to become immortal, somewhere along the way, sometime along the timeline, a child or a group of children will try to kill it. Now, this usually happens in the very early stage of the snake's road to immortality because, I mean, obviously, once it turns into a giant snake, a mang, or and then later turn into a ran, there's almost no way for children to kill it anymore after that. It's too big, too strong. Although there has been stories where some very young child hero were able to slay one of these giant snakes, but Those were definitely exceptions. So, anyway, somewhere along the way of a snake's journey, it had to survive being killed by a child or a group of children. Otherwise, well, you get the picture. Otherwise, it's dead, it's gone. And let's say the snake manages to survive the trial of innocence. It survived being killed by a child. It now turned into Ran and then turned into Jiao. Now it's super big, super powerful. No problem. Jade Emperor has another trial ahead of it, the trial of lightning. So somewhere along the line, usually along the later part of its journey, right before it can turn into a dragon, a lot of time it happens, there will be lightning that just come down from the heaven, and not just one lightning, two lightning. It's like a whole. It's like the sky just opened up, and the sky just rain lightning down everywhere. And this creature, this demigod, whether it's a Zhan or a Jiao, have to find a way to survive this. Otherwise, it dies. It just wasted thousands of years to get burned to a crisp by lightning. Now, there has been a lot of stories about the snake and their immortality. I even told one on the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast before, so if you haven't, please check out the podcast and support and share. Uh, the best podcast in the world, if you didn't know that. Johnny Tiger Experience podcast. I talked about the legend of the white snake, so I'm not going to go into that again here because it's a really long story, even though it is a really lovely story. I'm going to tell you of another snake story. About 60 years, 70 years ago, in northeastern China, there was a really poor village. The elder or the leader, the village, the head of the village was a guy named Yang. Yang was a really hard-working guy. He worked hard, worked alongside with the villagers to build, to plant, to hunt, and Yang had a beautiful wife at home. But despite of how hard they tried, they were unable to get with child. And this was a big deal. In Chinese tradition, if you are unable to procreate, to carry on your family name, that's like one of the biggest sin. Usually, that's a ground for getting rid of your wife to find a new wife because it's usually blamed on the woman. It's not scientific, it's not right. That's the way it used to be. So Yang and his wife, they tried and tried to pray to the gods and goddesses. They ate all the right stuff. They took all the right medicine. They drank all the herbal treatment, but they were still unable to get a child. One afternoon, after working in the farm, Yan came home and decided to take a nap. And from Yan's own account of the story, he lay down in bed, and suddenly there was a guy in a green robe, like a guy wearing a green bathrobe, standing by his bed. And this guy looked really panicky. They're really desperate. This guy said, "Please save me. Please save me." And then he disappeared. Yang thought it was just a dream, so he rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. And the next thing he knew, there was the same guy again, this time standing at the foot of his bed, looking even more desperate. He's jumping up and down. "Please, for Christ's sake, for crying out loud, for the good grace of God, can you help me? I need help. I'm going to die. Well, now, Yang was not a particularly superstitious person, but he wasn't totally a non-believer either. So after seeing this guy in a green robe twice appearing asking for help, he decided, well, guess I'm not going to get a nap because this guy is going to keep this up forever. So he got out of bed, put on his hat, put on his shoes, pull on his pants, and went out the door to see if there's anything amiss outside. And just in the yard across the street, well, they didn't really have a street, but across the village road, whatever, he saw a group of children torturing a little green snake. The green snake looked like it was just like on the verge of dying. It wasn't barely moving anymore. Yang went over there and shooed the children away, took the snake home and treated the snake. And he made sure the snake was back to health before letting it go. About a month later, Yang had a dream. In his dream was the same guy in a green robe, looking much calmer and healthy this time. The guy said, "Thank you for saving me from the trial of innocence. To repay you, I brought you a gift." And opening his robe, he produced a tiny infant and put it in Yang's arms and disappeared. About a week after that, Yang's wife was pregnant, and they had a beautiful, healthy baby boy 10 months later. And this boy was later named Yang She, means snake Yang, to remember the snake immortal that gave them a child to pay back the favor. Thank you for checking out today's Wisdom Wednesday. We'll be back again tomorrow for Toy Thursday. For now, have a good night.